The first season of Mushoku Tensei was lightning in a bottle. It was a technical marvel that not only blew me away with its collection of personalities, but just the sheer marvel and scale of its world. The level of attention given to making the regions our characters inhabit and traverse feel alive, feel lived in, was exceptional, contributing to a globetrotting adventure I won't soon forget. Season 2 was put into an interesting position from the beginning, considering that our ragtag group of adventurers had already split and gone their separate ways by the end of Season 1. Reminiscent of the events occurring behind the scenes as well. Rather than continuing with the quickly paced standard set in Season 1, where we watched our main trio jump from place to place almost episodically, Season 2 opts to slow down in order to properly deconstruct the nature of our troubled main character. Yep, it's one of those arcs. It's a risky strategy, potentially alienating an audience looking forward to that sense of adventure present in the previous season. So, does the show manage to adapt itself to all of its newfound changes, or does it struggle to capture the same magic present in its predecessor? I was gonna say let's find out, but I already know how I feel on the subject, and you probably have your own thoughts as well. Makes you wonder why people use that transition in the first place. Anyways, let's find out. Quite possibly the most evident difference between seasons at first glance lies in the quality of animation. What made Season 1 such a remarkable production was the unbelievable consistency it was able to achieve. Not only were the highs high, but there were practically zero chinks in the armor that you could point at and say, yeah, that looks like shit. Season 2 was at a major disadvantage from the beginning due to the absolute bloodbath that was its turnover in staff. Between the two seasons, they lost their animation producer Toshiya Otomo to Onimai, I'm Now Your Sister, which is pretty fair. I'd do it too. They also lost director Manabu Okamoto to Idolmaster. They lost their character designer, a boatload of freelance talent, and more, believe it or not. As a result, that remarkable consistency is no longer present, with many instances leaving me thinking, really, they couldn't add just a couple of more in-between frames here? Looks like his fingers traversing the fourth dimension. Paired with a presumably shorter production time, the fact that the team was still able to create something as impressive as this is a testament to their effort. One man that did in fact stick around, who played an insurmountably large part in both seasons of Mushoku Tensei, was key animator Q Kawa. The guy is an unbelievable talent, killing it on multiple high-profile action productions. His stuff is the good, animating with a blistering speed that often lends itself perfectly to Z-combat sequences. This Attack on Titan cut in particular is so sexy. The fact that he was heavily involved in Season 2 was a godsend. Not only were his own cuts superb, as is his standard, but he was able to draw on those who not only want to work with, but look up to him to make their own stellar contributions. The results speak for themselves, reaching the same peaks that Season 1 did, something that would at first seem impossible given all the factors weighted against them. You couple this with excellent direction and voice acting peaking when the show really needed to hit those emotional climaxes, and all in all, it's a production that 95% of seasonal anime would give their C7 cervical vertebrae to obtain. It's no Season 1, but they made the most of what they had, and I was left appeased. Now, on to the story. I love Sylphie. She gives off real mom energy once she becomes a mom. Team Bulbasaur for the win. Squirtle and Charmander enjoyers can suck it. Another thing that I love is some good old character development, which happens to be the focus of Season 2's narrative. Now this is quite the hill to climb, considering the task at hand entails getting the viewer invested into a guy who, rather than attending his mother's funeral in his past life, strummed his instrument to the tune of obscene animated material. Yeah, considering most of the knocks on the show in Season 1 were in some way related to Rude us as a character, doubling down on the emotional connection with said character was a bold move to say the least. However, the story's potency really hinges on this investment. After all, the oversimplified plot revolves around a character reincarnated into another world where we watch him grow from a newborn, presumably all the way to his eventual death. If the viewer isn't engaged with this character arc, while I'd argue that the outside variables are intriguing enough to still keep one entertained, it's certainly a tough task to convince someone to stick with it to the end. Now, I'd argue that anyone who made it to Season 2 most likely has at least the faintest of connections with Rudy, or at least can deal with his constant transgressions, so it a little bit feels targeted to a non-existent demographic. But hey, what do I know? In order to achieve all of this, the show asks the viewer to hunker down and take a load off at totally not Hogwarts, the chosen locale for the majority of Season 2's events. Here, while addressing Rudy's deep-rooted issues is at the forefront of the plot, the secondary quest is building up the main players that'll be relevant for the rest of the story. Between fleshing out characters only briefly mentioned beforehand or meeting entirely new faces, the show takes advantage of the downtime to expand the cast dramatically, leaving you wondering how everybody's paths will one day be tied back together once they depart on their own separate journeys. When you put all of these pieces together, between the slower, more slice-of-life pacing, introduction of new faces, and deconstruction of our main character, it left me feeling like this was more of an in-between season than anything. Still very important to the overall story, but nonetheless. Season 1 was a balls-to-the-wall action adventure with the occasional sprinkling of introspection, and with all of its new players being introduced, Season 3 is shaping up to be the same way. I hate to demean the most recent staff's work, but if there were ever a time for half of your staff to leave and procure a dip in production quality, it'd probably be the arc where dialogue and exposition are at the bow of the ship. So that's good, I guess. In conclusion, while this season certainly felt less ambitious than its predecessor, it succeeds in achieving its main goals, bridging the events of Season 1 and what I assume to go down in Season 3, while also offering a fair amount of redemption for our main character. He's someone who cast away all hands that attempted to reach out and help, instead choosing to play the victim in his life, and despite being given a second chance at it, he was more so terrified at the idea of making the same mistakes again. Throughout both of his lives, he's been an oversized child hiding behind the guise of an adult, and while you'd think that certain events would serve as turning points for his character, there were just as many where old detrimental habits rear their ugly heads, and you question whether he's really even changed at all. Watching him finally begin to mature into a person who recognizes the failures in both his past and current lives as an opportunity to grow is a deeply cathartic experience. He finally feels like a character the viewer can support full-heartedly, accepting the help from those around him and taking those first few steps towards the character he'll become. It's an imperfect story. He'll continue to have lapses in judgment and make mistakes, but just like Season 2's production, these are just mere hurdles for both the characters and team to handle together. Also, the fact that they made a 12-episode arc revolving around a man not being able to play with his thing is insane. Immense respect. I cannot believe it. God, I love anime.